All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Start Your Dungeons. I'm Adam,
I'm Bryce.
and today we're going to talk about the brand new Star Wars Shatterpoint game.
Yeah, so basically this game just came out about the beginning of June, 2023. And so I picked it up and I built everything, kind of assembled it all and everything. So for this one being our first miniature game interview, what we're going to do is kind of go through the core box, kind of my experience building it, and then have Adam and I talk a little bit about gameplay after we've gone through the entire core box itself.
Okay, so let's start by talking about the components of the box. What do you think about the quality of the components overall?
So I'll kind of break it down into three different categories for that. The first one being tokens and things. I really enjoyed them. I think they're good. They're colorful. They're easy. What I do like is that they're double sided in most cases, so they have multi use purpose. It's not like a ton of tokens that you need, where it's like one for one player, one for the other. Everything kind of be used. Nice printing on them. A little bit easier, I think, to kind of understand what they go for as well, because a lot of it is symbol based. Um, in terms of the models, I'll talk about the models themselves and then the terrain. I think they're both very high quality. For people who don't know, this game was made by Atomic Mass Games, who's more famous for having spearheaded the Marvel Crisis Protocol game and also kind of taken over the other Star Wars games that were originally owned by Fantasy Flight.
Legion.
And, yeah, Legion, X-Wing, Armada, all those. And so for me, the real reason why that they're kind of nice quality is like they feel like a step up from what they had from Marvel Crisis Protocol, in my opinion. Really nice quality, a lot of detail. One of the big things I'll throw out there that I really like is with Star Wars, we have a lot of things on there like markings on Ahsoka's face. Darth Maul, famous for his red and black kind of marking. Those are all raised areas, and I actually really, really liked that because they're easier for people to paint.
You don't have to freehand those.
No, absolutely. And I think that was really smart on their decision. It makes the miniatures easier to paint. And then the buildings themselves, thick, solid plastic. We'll talk about assembly in a little bit with them, but they feel good. They're not too heavily weighted to where they're hard to move around, but they do have some weight to them, so they stay when you put them on a table. And I really like that.
Not like paper terrain constantly.
Yeah, falling around moving and everything.
What about the assembly? Because I know you mentioned Crisis Protocol. I know that there have been a lot of people complain about assembling Crisis Protocol miniatures. What about the Shatterpoint miniatures and the?
Yeah, I will say they've gotten better with it, but originally Marvel Crisis Protocol was a bit of a pain. But I do think these are some of the nicest and easiest models. I won't compare it to now. You do need glue and things, but they are similar to almost like a push fit style, where a lot of it is for the models themselves in terms of the miniatures. They're being built mostly build a body, build an arm with one or two pieces or even one piece, and then slotting it almost in so it actually goes into the model, and then you glue so you're not like gluing it flat edge to flat edge in most cases. So I really, really liked that. It was really great kind of to have that ability to easily get everything assembled in most cases. I will say most things are easy to assemble, but I will give them flack for the droids. I think the droids. I have not played Star Wars Legion in a very long time. I did not play when the droids were out. I played very early on, and apparently the droids are very similar in that, and they are a lot of ball and socket joints are very weird kind of joints that I just am not used to as a miniature assembler, and I just really thought they were very, very difficult enough to where I got frustrated with them, and I would have to walk away, or I would have to glue them, set them in a spot, and then just leave them for a while.
Yeah, because they look flimsy.
Yeah, and even just a little bit of pressure, I was worried about it. So now that they're glued on bases, I'm good. In terms of terrain, I have to give AMG props. This terrain was some of the easiest I've ever built in my life.
Nice.
So one of the things that you do in this core box is you get a bunch of buildings, and different things. And now because of that, we have a boatload of pieces to assemble. And I was like, that's going to be a pain. Well, the way it works is a lot of their stuff is actually built to where it slots into each other, or it has a way to where you put it on the model, and half of it has these little notches almost to where it notches into the already existing piece, and then
Hmm.
you just glue it, and it kind of holds itself, so it doesn't move around a bunch. It makes it kind of set in how you build it,
Yeah.
and I really, really like that. I don't know if that's how they do it with Marvel Crisis Protocol, but I
Okay.
will give them major props that I've never had any built like that, and that is super nice.
So other than like your, you know, standard set of tools for assembly, I mean like glue, what else would you need for something like this?
I will recommend, obviously, you're going to need clippers to clip them off the sprues. I do like the way that they've numbered all the sprues and have numbers and letters with it, so it's a little bit
Mhm.
easier to tell what goes with what. Um, you will need probably a hobby knife or something to shave off some mold lines. Not a lot. Was
Mhm.
genuinely surprised with how little there was on there. That was really nice to see. Um, and then yeah, you can use plastic glue on these. I'm a
Mhm.
super glue guy because I've always worked with metal models, so I never
Right.
use it. But you can use, I would assume, plastic glue with these.
Yeah. Um, what about like things like files? Do you ever use files for your miniatures?
I personally don't. I don't own any. I have friends who do. I will say that they might be really useful for the lightsabers
Hmm.
because they are so thin that if you try and hold them and strike a knife against them to remove some of that, you're gonna probably break it. They
For me personally, I couldn't live without my files.
right.
If I'm doing miniatures, I'm and that's probably why I have issues with my hand. But yeah, it's you know that's a requirement for me, but maybe not everyone.
Yeah, I do think you can get by without it in this set, but I do think that, especially with the lightsabers, cutting them as close as possible
Hmm.
when you do that, and then, just running a little bit of blade over it. I held them against my actual finger and then pressed on them, so it was like they stayed flat. That helped me a little bit, and there's not bad mold lines in there,
Hmm.
but I have painted some of them and noticed there's a little bit of mold
Okay,
line on there
because
that
they're
could,
small,
yeah, they are thin. Like, they
like
are really thin.
thinner than the Imperial Assault lightsabers,
Yeah,
which is kind of incredible. I mean,
absolutely.
those were you know pretty thick for
Yeah,
smaller models, and
yeah,
these are
yeah,
they're
very thin.
tiny. Um, so moving into the next set. So how easy is it to get into this game in your opinion?
So, one thing I'll talk about is we'll talk about the rule book for this. I want to state this before we move on. There was a massive change done to cover
Hmm.
and the way cover works in the game right before release. So, just as a fair warning for anyone picking this up, please go online and download the rulebook. It is a massive change, and the rulebook is actually obsolete in the box in most
Hmm.
cases. There is a lot of things in it that still work, but that big change to how cover and hunker tokens work, I think, is so big that you really need to make sure that you notice that. In terms of the rulebook, I don't hate it
Hmm.
actually. I really like at the beginning how they kind of, and a lot of games have done this recently, and I've really enjoyed it, where beginning of the book is kind of about the game overall, kind of about like introducing unit cards and all sorts, and like how the struggle tracker works and all that. And then it goes into like setting up a game, and then as you play a game, kind of how that would work through the rulebook. I will say that some of it is a little finicky, and I am excited for them to put out a really good FAQ to kind of help clear some things
Hmm.
up. But there is some times where some parts of the rulebook say something, and then you'll have to flip to another side to get the final clarification
Mm,
on it. That's not terrible,
yeah.
but it is kind of at times a little bit frustrating to kind of flip back and forth.
Yeah. So does it require a lot of memorizing of keywords?
No. So, unlike a lot of games now where I feel like you have 50 or 60 keywords and they're all this big stuff, um, the keywords are only, there's only six actual like ability keywords. I do think that they're a little bit less normal, like they're less used than normal.
Hmm.
A lot of what you're going to probably look at is just an understanding the keywords of like what your character is in terms of like, are they a Galactic Republic unit? Are they part
Hmm.
of the 501? That sort of thing. But that's all on the cards. But it's not like you have to remember a rule so much as you have to just remember, oh, like if my guy says I can make another Galactic Republic unit dash, well, all of my guys are, or most of them are. So you kind of can do that. So I do like that, though. There's only 6 keywords. It feels good to have that. I haven't had an issue yet.
Especially at the beginning of the game's release.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of keywords that end up getting released in expansions.
Potentially, yeah.
Coming down the road, but I think as a beginning, especially for new players, that's probably helpful. Right. And you've mentioned the symbols that are used. How much of the game is symbol based?
So FFG loves to do symbol-based dice. It's just kind of their thing, and I get it. They want to be different with everything, and that's fine. The dice are all symbol-based, which is kind of nice because you're not looking for counting of any kind. Mm-hmm. You're just looking at what you got and then determining how everything... The stance cards, which are what you use when you determine after your hits of like what you're actually going to do when you hit somebody in combat or at range, that kind of goes and is all symbol based as well. So in this game, it's less about learning what your stuff is in regards to like a boatload of text, so much as learning what your keywords are. No, your symbols are. And then once you have those symbols kind of down, you'll understand like, oh, this does 2 damage. This is 2 damage in a reposition. This is 2 damage in a heal. That's kind of what you have to learn. And there is a lot of symbols. I counted a total of about over 20 of them. Now, a lot of them are similar to where you kind of can go like, that's a movement based one. But I will say this, my only complaint with this game's symbolism is the dash and the shove are both dotted arrows, but the dash goes back and tapers into a point where the shove just goes straight back. But they're both dashed, and at far away distances can be a little difficult to kind of like determine which one's which. But other than that, this game really is a symbol based game. You're learning your symbols and kind of getting an understanding of that.
So we were talking about assembly. So when it as it pertains to getting into the game, how much assembly is going to take place before you can start playing this game?
So I will say you could assemble all the character models and play, but it is not going to be as good of a game. I do think, unfortunately, you need to build the terrain. I actually think the terrain is super key in this game. There's a lot of things that it controls, how movement works. It controls how you score objectives. There's really a lot of positioning work in terrain, and I think that moving forward even, I would consider getting more terrain just than what's in the box. You do get a lot, but you're going to have to build it all, unfortunately. And that does take time. It's not like a pick it up with your friends in the afternoon and you like throw it together very quickly. But and you might be able to if you like tag team it all, but it is something where you're going to have to build it all before you play. Now you could build a squad each in the terrain and play. That is a way to play as like a demo-ish game. I think that's not a bad way. But for a full game, you need everything assembled.
So now let's talk about the time it takes to play this box. How many missions are there in this box?
So there's only one, but it's different. So Shatterpoint has done this thing that I think is actually at first I thought would not be good, but is actually really cool. Is that there's a singular mission, right? And that mission tells you how to set up the board. And then there are 3 struggles is what they're called. And each struggle has 3 cards that you shuffle and you flip one over, and that's the struggle you're fighting for. So the way the game works is you are competing to win 2 out of those 3 struggles, which are basically like rounds in the game. There's a struggle 1, struggle 2, struggle 3 if needed. And basically what happens is when you flip over that one, the other 2 get discarded. So you might never see one of the 1 struggle cards very often. You might see it, or you might get a nice variety, but at first I thought that wouldn't be enough, and having played it a couple of times now, there's a lot of meat to that, because what's really great is the first struggle is usually 5 objectives, and they're set up either in like a double L shape, but flipped on each side, or a plus symbol in the middle. And then the next card that you flip, the struggle, whoever lost the original struggle picks from the two maps which objectives are going to be flipped. So it offers some variety in that regard, and it actually is, in my opinion, I think a really cool system that I never really thought of. And I really think that even though there's only really one mission in this game, there's a lot of longevity to that one mission, which is good because they haven't really announced yet whether or not they're putting out more. But the missions in here, I think you could get a lot of longevity. It's switching up terrain, everything like that. Really, there's just a lot to it for it being one mission only.
Yeah, just a nice kind of random mix.
Exactly.
So how long is an average game?
So I've played now 7 or 8 games, and most of them taken, and these were teaching games even, an hour to an hour and a half. You know,
That's
and these
pretty good.
Yeah,
even in a skirmish game.
right. And I think that really one of its things that really makes it shine is the system itself, the struggle system. If gameplay becomes stagnant and you're both kind of not really pushing the agenda of holding objectives, it will force the game forward. It will add momentums to the struggle tracker, which is kind of how you score. You have to get this clear piece on the struggle tracker onto your side on top of one of your black cubes, and you add black cubes to your momentum side.
It's like tug of war.
Yeah, kind of like tug of war. As you score objectives and things, and if it ever lands in the center point, you both add one. If it ever stays on your opponent's side, you add another momentum to try and make it so where you can win. So it really does push the game along. And, I've only ever gotten to 2 struggles. I actually haven't ever gotten to 3. But I do think that they do a really good job of kind of helping move the game along, whereas some miniature games, you get kind of stuck in the, I can't hit you, you can't hit me, neither of us are scoring, this is weird. I'm just kind of slowly moving. Like, no, it really goes, we're gonna push this game. And I think that's a really good system that's not really been in a game that I've seen.
So let's talk about specifically the rule book and the cards themselves. So is the rule book easy to read and follow?
I think it is in some ways, but like I said earlier on, there are issues at times where you have to go back to a previous page to kind of look at things. I will say there are a few times where I've taught the game and then realized that fact and had to say, like, I apologize, I read that rule wrong. A lot of it is with terrain and line of sight. I will say line of sight looks complicated, but if you look up some of the rules for it, it is actually not that complicated anymore because of the way they did the cover system. But I do think you probably could read it and get the gist of the game pretty easily, but make sure to definitely look into those minute kind of little details because you might miss them if you're not careful.
What's funny is I find line of sight is one of the things that a lot of rule books fall down on.
It's hard.
It's something that it's so hard for whoever's writing that rule book to explain it without showing it.
Right.
A lot of times YouTube videos have been more helpful to me.
And there is a great YouTube video that I found that explains line of sight, and kind of what the way it does is it says there are 4 ways that you do not have line of sight, and if you meet all of those criteria, you don't have line of sight. That's a really good one, and we can maybe link that below in the channel to kind of help you with that. And it was very well done. I really liked that one.
Are there any cheat sheets in the box? Because I know that's one thing I really like, having a quick reference.
So there is one on the back. My only problem with it is it just tells you what the symbols are, but because there's so many of them, it's like, it's disarm. What does disarm do?
Yeah. So then you got to look up disarm.
So you got to look it up. I wish they had done a little bit better job of putting some page numbers on the back to kind of help you find stuff. Or had done like a better like double-sided one to it, to where it was like, oh, this side is more like just all the status conditions, and the back was more of like how a turn flow goes or how an attack sequence happens. It is there. It's just, it's right at the cusp of being great.
Yeah.
It's just good.
I think give it a couple of weeks, and maybe Esoteric Order of Gamers will probably post a quick reference guide that'll be sufficient.
And there are a few I've already seen of quick reference sheets and stuff, so like you can easily find those online.
So what about the cards? Are the cards easy to follow?
I really like the way they've done this game in terms of how they've done unit cards. So my big thing is that most cards don't have a lot on them,
Mm-hmm.
which I really like. Now, because most units have maybe 2 or 3 abilities, most have 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of just follow along with the card. And because they have symbols next to them of like reactive, active, I forget what the other one is. There's a couple of different ones you can do.
Yeah.
Those really help you kind of understand when that's going to happen. So you can kind of look at your card and say, oh, I have a reactive ability now. Let's see if I can do it. I think it's a pretty easy to follow. I think the stances, once you kind of understand it, it's pretty easy to follow. When we played, I kind of walked by and showed you. And then after I showed you, it was very much like, oh, I can kind of figure it out. You may have forgotten 1 or 2 symbols, but like it's very easy to kind of understand. And the abilities, there's not a lot, which I kind of like. A lot of them are very similar in some aspects, at least in this core box, where it's like they have force speed, where it's like you make a move or something. Like a couple characters have that, or Pride of the Mandalores, you can make a jump. A couple characters have that. It's kind of nice that it's a lot of repeats in some regards, so you're not having to learn a ton of rules.
So one of my favorite questions in the these box games that we have is this box a complete game? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I think in terms of 2 ways we kind of look at it, we look at it, can you take this box to an event? Could you play in a tournament? There's 2 ways they've done tournament play. One way is bring a squad of 2 squads, which kind of how you set up your game is you build 2 different squads of units. And play that for the entire tournament, or bring 4 squads, play 2 every round, but you have to play each one at least once. There's 4 squads in the box. You can take all of them to a tournament. There is no restrictions on that. So that is really, really nice. The other thing I really like is, unless they rotate out models, these models are hopefully evergreen to always be used because it's in a core box. The terrain's great. I mean, you could go to an event right now and play with what's in that box, and I think that's fantastic to have. We see a lot of sometimes starter boxes or core boxes that people make where it's like maybe a weird amount of points or something where it's like I can't.
You probably can't see it, but the Rune Wars miniatures game, I know that a lot of people complained that you had 2 really great, very small armies, but you could not take either one of those to an event and do anything with them. And I don't know, maybe that's one of the reasons why the game didn't catch on, or didn't have the longevity, I guess I should say, because it did catch on, just didn't have the longevity as other games.
Yeah, and I think for a skirmish game, really making it to where buying this box set is really, your way in, and if you never buy another thing again, you're good. I will say, if we're looking at how to expand from this, I recommend 2 big things. One, buy another dice pack. So you get 8 attack dice and 6 defense dice in this box. I'll tell you right now, I rolled more than that multiple times with the characters in the core set. I mean, I was rolling 7. I think I got up to 7 or 8 almost defense dice. And Maul, when he gets damage, rolls additional dice. And I mean, I had Darth Maul rolling like 13 something dice.
Big piles.
Yeah, so because you have so much, I do recommend you pick up a second set just for ease of rolling dice, unless you want to do rerolls, which can be confusing or irritating at times of trying to remember what you got. Especially because in this game you have hits and a thing called expertise, where it depends on how many you get, it changes them into things. So I think that's a little bit kind of irritating to try and do if you're having rerolls. And then the other thing I would recommend is actually, I think you want more terrain if you're really looking to get in this game. The box set does come with a good bit of terrain, but the more I've played it, the more I've been like, I need more. There are 2 terrain packs as we speak right now, 2 weeks after release, and they're very good. Elevation is key in this game to a lot of things, and I do really think that if you're looking to play this game the way it's probably intended to play, you'll want a couple of terrain sets. Maybe 1 or 2 more if you're looking for just a small set, but I think terrain on the board is really key to making this game have more of a competitive edge to it.
Okay. What else would you need to expand the game? I mean, as far as, where we are 2 weeks after release, what does it look on the horizon as far as releases for new miniature packs, new squads?
So they are releasing a bunch of squads. The way the game works is basically you build a squad which has a primary, a secondary, and supporting unit in it. They have a bunch of releases already set up. Adepticon this year was huge for them. They released a bunch of stuff. Right now they're kind of in Clone Wars era. We're moving on to the later eras, kind of down at the end of this year. But we've got everything from the Night Sisters coming, Mace Windu, General Grievous, the Count Dooku and Obi-Wan pack released as well on release week. So there's a lot of variety, and I think what's really great is because the way the game works is you pick a primary and then you pick based on how their squad points, you build your secondaries and your supportings. Mm-hmm. As long as you have the points for it, you can play whoever you want. You can play Darth Maul with clone troopers if you want. There's actually no limit as long as they're from the same era, and I really, really like that. So
yeah,
as the game expands, I think the big thing will be the variety you get. It's really nice to see because sometimes it stinks when you buy a pack of something and you're like, oh, they only work this way together. But I noticed one of my favorite teams plays Obi-Wan and Ahsoka with the clone troopers. Mm-hmm. That's not like their normal squad they kind of come with in the box, but I really like that kind of build, and it's very defensive and like really good at like kind of not taking a bunch of damage. But as they release new things, you could do an all droid list. You could do a list with all Mandalorians. So there's a lot of variety in list building, and I think that's really great as we expand out. We're just adding more list building, and every new squad pack is just a new opportunity for you to build with everything you own, not just a small bit like some games do.
So who is this box set for, in your opinion?
So we're going to talk about new wargaming players, and we're going to talk about people who play war games already. I think for its value, it's got so much in it. I mean, there's a ton of terrain, a ton of models. When this was released, I thought it was going to be a little expensive for what was in it. I was wrong. I'll flat out admit that. I mean, I pulled out the terrain sprues, and they filled almost the entire box. Like after I had pulled everything out, it was insane.
What's the list price on it?
I believe 170. And originally Marvel Crisis Protocol was 100, and so at first I was like, a little bit to the. You get more plastic. You really do. You get a good bunch of plastic. You've got a ton of models, a ton of variety in this box set, and I think really that value is there. So for a new player, 100%, if you want to get into this game, this is the way to get in. You're going to get so much out of it. In terms of playing it as a person who's never played war games, I think it is a step up. I don't want to say it's an easy game or a hard game. I'd put it at like a medium rating almost. There is some trickiness to it that I think a lot of other people who play miniature games will kind of see. But I think if you're new to it, it is kind of a lot to kind of grab in. It does help you kind of set it up pretty easily, but it might be a little bit tricky and a little bit difficult starting out. But once you get it down, it is not a hard game to play. And then for season war gamers, I mean, if you're looking to pick up a Star Wars game, I mean, this is a good one, I think. I think, I played Legion. I liked it. Unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't a bunch of releases, so I kind of like fell off it. But I think if you're looking for a more skirmish version of whereas Legion's more of an army game and you want really great Star Wars models, this is the game for you.
I know that Atomic Mass had released skirmish rules for Legion. That were kind of, I think those, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was right around the pandemic.
Yeah. It was smaller scale. It was really nice because a lot of it was what you got in half of a starter box, or they have these new starter boxes all in ones that I believe work for that, and they are still small model count in some regards with the skirmish, but I think this hits more of a skirmish game like feel,
actual skirmish, because like when I saw, because I looked at those rules, because I don't play a lot of miniatures war games. Anytime I do, it's usually Bryce, and it's usually not my area of expertise. But when I looked at those rules, I was like, okay, this is just Legion with fewer points.
It kind of is, yeah.
But this is something completely different. It feels different. It feels like Star Wars. It definitely has this kind of unique feeling to it.
And I would say too, if you're a Legion player, it is in some regards similar in some ways, but it is different. It's kind of hard to say because I've had a couple of Legion players ask me like, "Oh, should I pick it up?" The models are not the same scale, which
Right.
kind of about. I
Yeah.
mean, it kind of stinks, kind of good. I get why they did it, but I do think that if you do like Legion and you're looking for something besides their skirmish rules, this is a good game to kind of fit that role. If you're looking for something a little more, less small size army game
Right.
kind of feel to it.
I know for me, since I'm not as much of a war gamer, it was still fun for me.
Right.
I played through it. I didn't have a lot of troubles with the rules. Most of everything made sense, and Bryce was able to clear things up for me. That doesn't always happen.
No.
We play a lot of games, and like he'll know a lot of the rules, and I'm looking at it like I have no idea. I didn't have a lot of those moments playing Shatterpoint.
And I think Shatterpoint does a really good job of like where in some games where like we play, it's like, oh, I won. There's no coming back. You can come back because
Right.
when a struggle ends, everything
It resets.
it resets your
Yeah.
struggle tracker. Now models stay on the board where they're at and stuff, but the game does kind of tip you towards where, okay, you
Yeah.
lost this, but you can still come back. And I think that's a really great thing for new players as well to not have a negative play experience.
Yeah.
Of, oh, I want to go play this miniature game at the shop, get my butt handed to me, and be like,
Yeah.
oh, that wasn't fun. This game is still fun. Like, I have lost a bunch in this game, as I demo, even like, I still enjoy it, and I think
Yeah.
that's a really big thing.
Yeah. So the big question is, would you keep playing based on this box?
So, as someone who's a pretty prolific miniature gamer, yeah. I'll say this right now. If anyone who knows me in the miniature game community, I dogged on this game. I literally,
I remember.
I was like, they're copying this game. This system looks really like not that tactical. And our local shop was getting it, and I was like, you know what? I'll help like do demos for it. I know it's gonna be a big game. Like I'll just do it even if the game's not that good. The game is great. Like it really took what I thought would be an okay game, and it really shines. It's not Marvel Crisis. I was worried it was just going to be Marvel Crisis Protocol with Star Wars slapped on it, call it a day. It's not. It's a whole new system. It's a whole new design. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I've bought a bunch of stuff already for it. Besides the core box, I'm looking to play in like events. I'm looking to do as much as I can in the community with it. Like, yeah, this box surprised me, and I think if you're on the fence about it and leaning more towards you want it, but you're not sure, I think give it a shot.
I mean, definitely go to a game shop if anyone's doing a demo,
Right.
and see. I mean, if you don't have a game shop in the area, look on YouTube and watch some live play.
There's some really good people already doing some battle reports.
I mean, as far as me, like not being someone who, like, whenever I buy a miniatures game box, I'm usually doing it to paint the miniatures. That's the side of the hobby that I gravitate towards. It's just painting the miniatures. I actually want this box.
Yeah, he literally we played the first game, and he was like, "That's gonna give you on my shelf." Like it was.
I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah.
I also like. I didn't dog it like he did because I didn't know as much about it before it was going to be released, but at the same time it's like $170. It's expensive. I don't know. Wasn't really sure because I've got Imperial Assault, and I like Imperial Assault. I like little Star Wars figures. So I didn't know. I played one game. I want it. I'm gonna buy some squad packs.
Yeah, I think it really does a good job of like drawing you in. It feels cinematic. That's a really good word for it. I think it's like you want those duels when you're like, oh, I really want to see that moment from Rebels where Ashoka versus Darth Vader underneath, and it's really her first time seeing Anakin after a while. You can make that happen, eventually, and there's some really cool things that I think this box does that I don't think you really get in some other games as much. Like it just you have these things where you're like, oh, well, Asajj is coming out, and like, I got to deal 3 wounds, but I dealt 3 wounds, and I jumped up, and I like force pushed this guy away, and now I'm holding this object. Like, you can do all those things, and like, not without you needing to do like, oh, these super deep, like the game just kind of breathes that thematic experience.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone liked our coverage of the game. I hope everyone tries it in some capacity and comment and say how you liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know what you think of it. Were you on the fence about buying it like I was, or just if you really want any more information, shout out to us in the comments. We'll be happy to answer anything you might have. But yeah, I definitely think if we're going to talk for our first miniature core game review, like, this was a solid, what could have not been what I thought originally a solid. This was a very solid game.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Take care.